Hello and welcome to the NextGen Planners Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Carolan. This is the Tech Stack special, and we've got Rohit and Amal from Saturn AI. Hi, guys.
Hey, Adam.
Hey, Adam.
Right, okay, we're going to get stuck into it. So if you want to know a bit more about Rohit and Amal and what those guys are building, we want you to go to the show notes and have a look. But we're going to talk AI today in financial planning. I think these guys have got something interesting to say. But let's get stuck into it. We're going to ask the same questions on a lot of these podcasts. What is new and interesting? And we obviously know what the answer is going to be from you guys, but what's new and interesting in the world of financial planning at the moment? What's on your mind? And what does the landscape look like?
Cool. So what's new and interesting? Obviously, we're building Saturn. So for us, that's super new and interesting. What Saturn ultimately is a platform that delivers automated admin, compliance, and operational activities for financial planning firms. In terms of kind of across the landscape, we think AI is ultimately massively interesting as a technology. The way we've approached it is thinking from a problem perspective. So we've gone in and done 60 interviews with financial planning firms to understand the real problems that financial planners are interested in solving, that are burning. And then we've built software off the back of those problems. Outside of Saturn, I think we were just talking about it, Adam, before we started recording. I think what OpenAI are doing with the GPTs is really, really cool. Even just to build an internal GPT, for example, to do training for onboarding financial planners could be amazing because it's not a regulated activity, but it is an activity that you want to streamline and make efficient. And outside of that, obviously, Microsoft launched Copilot, though it's a bit restricted in terms of the number of users you need to have in Microsoft to be able to use it. These tools are basically fantastic for adoption of AI in the financial planning industry because it's reducing those barriers, reducing those hurdles that firms have previously with older technologies to get on board. And it's really demonstrating that value really quickly.
Yeah. Okay. On top of that, I think you also had the AI Summit quite recently. With that, you're seeing these regulatory proposals globally from America doing one thing, EU doing one thing, India and China and Russia doing one thing. And then there is UK trying to be pro-innovative, trying to adopt these technologies in their systems. Obviously, that's the best position to be in. And from our side, we believe data and privacy is at the center while promoting innovation. And at Saturn, we look at this very seriously.
Okay. So this is really interesting to me. So ChatGPT, OpenAI, I think, launched ChatGPT. So we're at the back end of 2023. We're coming up to a year anniversary, which blows my mind. The technology, I think, where GPT-4 is there. I think GPT-5 is going to pop up in the next few weeks, and things are happening really quickly. So what was the point that you thought AI is a place that we need to be? So we don't need to go into the full background, but what was the turning point for you where you thought, right, okay, we need to build a business around AI?
Yeah. Previously, I was working in RegTech, and GPT-2, GPT-3 wasn't able to do math properly, and GPT-3 was still struggling with a lot of these questions that you were asking. From GPT 3.5, you've really seen a massive adoption along the world because you're, for the first time, able to interact with this alien digital system and interact in such a way that you can have immediate feedback and impact in your life, depending on the kind of prompts you're putting in. From there, I just quit my job and started working on Saturn with Rohit. It was quite important because the pace and velocity at which this industry is developing, if you're not part of it, you're going to be left out as a builder. But the massive benefits lies in people who are going to use it. I mentioned this in the conference recently. It's AI is not going to replace the jobs. The people who use AI are going to replace the jobs. And I'm massively, pro AI and want to be pro innovation and focus on enabling the future society with the use case of AI.
Yeah, and I
Anything,
guess
anything to add, Rohit?
no, from my perspective, it was quite similar. I mean, my background is in asset management, and so I used to see financial planning from a different angle. But oftentimes, our clients would be financial advice, financial planning firms, and we would joke about how backwards they were in terms of technology adoption. And now, when I'm building this software, I'm like, actually, it's not the financial planners who are backwards. It's actually the way the technology was built that was backwards. And it was not designed to deliver value for financial planners. It was designed to say, yo, I'm using the latest technology, look at me. And what AI allows people to do is use technology to deliver value for clients immediately. And that's the real benefit for me as to why we started working together on Saturn.
Okay. Okay. And it's happening really quickly. So we're going to shift now. Let's talk about. I'm an optimist, but we have to acknowledge there's going to be threats to this. So what are the threats? What are the issues? What are the challenges that you see around financial planning in particular and the use of AI? So I see a lot of fear in the sector at the moment. So there's a lot of people that I don't think agree with you and potentially perhaps agree with me that AI will be part of our everyday work. But what are the threats? What are the challenges?
So when we look at threats, and Adam, you probably speak to more financial planners than we do, but we're speaking to financial planners daily. And the biggest question that they have, and I can see it being a pervasive problem and a threat across the industry, is around data security and data privacy. So if you look at OpenAI just released GPT-4 128K, and we currently don't have access to that model in the UK in Azure because it's US based, they're US centric. And so what financial planning firms should be aware of when using AI is, are the servers in which the AI models are being used based in the UK, or are they based in the US? Because you're dealing with sensitive client data, the worst thing you could possibly do is open up a threat or a possibility that that information is hacked on its way to the US or on its way back from the US after it's been processed. And so everything that a financial planning firm should be aware of is just around that data security and data privacy. And what we've built from the beginning, it's more expensive for us to build this way, but it's actually a way to build trust with our clients, is saying that all of our servers are in the UK in Azure. So think about Microsoft using Azure is enterprise grade security on their servers versus OpenAI, that's probably a little bit different for the non-enterprise customers. That's super important. I think once you overcome that hurdle, we've got data flow diagrams, and that's the way we think about it to alleviate that stress. But I'm sure a lot of the pushback is around this fear of, where is my client's data going and how are people using it? Are they using it to train their models? That sort of stuff, which ultimately we'll never do. We cannot use client data to train models. That is just a no-go because it's their personal financial information and that's private to them.
Okay, I think it's worth just running through while we've got you guys. Like, we talk about things like Microsoft Azure. I don't think a lot of people will understand what Azure is as like a database, but we're effectively talking about Microsoft's version of like Amazon Web Services or Google's Drive or whatever they call it, or Dropbox. You know, their data storage, aren't we? So we're talking about a Microsoft database as the foundation. Is that right?
Correct. You're basically using an ecosystem that you're familiar with, and most of the advisors use Microsoft ecosystem, and they're familiar with that ecosystem, and they place a lot of trust in that. Microsoft's partnership with OpenAI allows a lot of these data scares to be sorted from day one, and also allows developers and builders like us to start building enterprise-grade software for customers like that in a safety-first manner.
Yeah, interesting. So when you're looking at this technology, one of the questions you think you're asking is it built around the Microsoft, ecosystem Azure? Because it seems like, the studies and research we've done is that most financial planning firms will use Microsoft Azure already because they're using Office 365. So around about 90% of our members use Office 365. The 10%, we're not sure what they're doing, but maybe they're just answering the question wrong. But anyway, we'll move on. So what are the opportunities? Let's talk about the opportunities. I mean, this is the good stuff. Let's talk about what you think is possible with the use of AI and what you guys are building and just the interesting stuff. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. So I'll be very specific to financial advisors and wealth managers. Just to imagine, I'm guessing most of your listeners have used ChatGPT in some format. Just to imagine that ChatGPT has been trained on this data that's public and is able to generate such an amazing set of impact. And you can ask to write a poem to solve a particular issue on financial advice. It does it beautifully. But just to understand the amount of data that you give out on a day-to-day basis, it's usually on your phone and your computer. It's not public, right? The amount of typing you do. Imagine if you leverage that data, how much more do these AI can do? The opportunity lies in there. It's about using the private data. 99% of the data that's out there is private. And obviously, these data needs to be trained and used in a manner that the models are able to leverage to basically enable you to become back human, to become a superhuman of sorts, to do a lot more for less. That's where the opportunity lies in. We at Saturn are looking at this very seriously. What we are doing is we are building systems in place to enable paraplanners and financial advisors to do a lot more for less, from suitability letters that we can write to a higher accuracy and a lot of personalization in a short amount of time. We are cutting it by 10x to things like preparing meeting notes and improving the data that you hold and creating these tiny reminders to clients and being personalized during the service. These are things that we are focused at Saturn at this moment.
Yeah. So if we look at that, it's really interesting. So, you've got so I can go on ChatGPT now. I wouldn't obviously put client data in it, but I could put client data in it, and it's ill-advised. And I could say, give me a meeting summary, but that ChatGPT wouldn't have been trained in what I wanted to do. So essentially what I'm hearing from you guys is you're actually training in a specific way what you want the AI to do.
Correct.
So it's almost like having an employee that you're training all the time to interpret the data, have output, be productive, all that. So it's almost like an extra employee. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's like I would say it's probably more akin to having 3 extra employees. And the way that we've trained the system is specifically on FCA regulation. So obviously a big thing in the news recently has been consumer duty. And basically all of the meeting notes, the documentation that's produced, the way that it's written, are written in line and ensuring compliance with consumer duty so that the firm doesn't therefore have to worry about shifting their templates away from what it was before to a more consumer duty compliant template. We can automate the creation of a letter for a client post a meeting with our system designed in a consumer duty friendly way. So obviously the 4 principles are around price and value, consumer understanding, and consumer understanding is actually where I think there's a huge opportunity. So right now we don't do this, but ultimately where I think we should get to as an industry is, let's say, Adam, you're a client of mine. The information that I have in that suitability letter is obviously regulatorily compliant, but you can go into an interactive document and it will explain stuff to you at your level of understanding that we've understood from a meeting. So let's say you're super sophisticated, which you definitely are. You're sophisticated, you understand the investment landscape, you understand what an IFA or a wealth management firm should be doing. The level of explanation I can use AI to provide to you will be more complex, more detailed than what I would provide to someone else who has less of an understanding. And so it allows personalization to a level that has never, ever been seen before. Like every firm, you've run a firm yourself, Adam, like every firm has templates and documents that they want as a firm. But what AI will allow you to do is have a firm level set of principles, and all those principles will be abided to alongside how a client wants to be interacted with. So it almost feels like the client is getting a one-to-one service all the time they're interacting with you.
Yeah, so personalization, which is essentially what financial planning firms need to do. I mean, but how does it feel building a tech firm in this way, because it's almost like new technology is coming out every week. You know, there's probably endless opportunities that you could solve within financial planning firms and elsewhere. You know, how do you stay focused in terms of the opportunities and what you're solving, what you're building, and do you see it growing arms and legs? Because, you know, if you're building a traditional tech firm in our sector, it's kind of you build a piece of technology, don't you? And you go, everyone comes to this technology, it's kind of done. What we're talking about here with you guys is it's never going to be done, is it?
No, never. I mean, the way that we think about it is there's a huge opportunity to build a completely different technology company within financial planning. Like, I go back 5-6 years, we used to use Morningstar databases, we used to use FE Fund Info. And the way that you interact with that data in a pre-AI world is completely different to how you should interact with that data in a post-AI world. On top of that, what I also think about, and we guys like us two talk about it a lot, is we are a financial planning software company that leverages AI. We are not ever going to be reliant on AI alone. We will use, so let's say, for example, the next technological revolution is going to be something to do with AR or VR. We will happily adopt that because we're a product that's designed to solve problems for financial planning and wealth management firms using technology that's available to us, not reverse.
Yeah. I mean, AR and VR is we've not talked about it much. I'm hoping to get some experts on the podcast, but AR and VR is also an opportunity that hasn't really been tapped into in the financial planning space. So AR and VR, if you listen to this, is mainly around things like the metaverse, which I think Facebook created, where the ability to step into a alternate reality and look at things in a different way. I actually had an ex-client call me up and said, what would be really cool, and you can go and build this if you want, what would be really cool is if I could actually see my assets as physical things in the metaverse, because people send these documents to me and I don't understand them. You know, they're just written words and I'm a visual person. So I just think that's a really cool thing, you know, that's coming from a live client that technology can solve, but it can't solve it at the moment.
Absolutely. It just coming back to the initial question that you asked, as Rohit said, our focus is going to continuously be on these client outcomes that we want to do. We think consumer duty, unlike a small part of the industry, think consumer duty is adding more pressure. A lot of paraplanners do think it's going to take a lot of time. What we see the overarching principle requires firms to produce good outcomes for their customers. We also see if you deliver good outcomes for the customers, you're also bringing your firm up to profitability and also being more efficient. How can you use technology to do that? And that's one of the biggest issues and the problems that we think every day. The way we think is consumer duty currently requires you to have outcomes across your products and services, price and value, consumer understanding, consumer support. That's essentially your entire firm in some sense. You need to collect data and also you gotta report to it. What if a technology existed where you do not need to even worry about these regulations and the details that go into it, but a technology that existed that nudged you to do a better job, and also focus on the clients and also focus more on profitability. And that's what Saturn focuses on right now. What we do is we use consumer duty as a way to get in between the data. And we use this data to help you automate, let's say, suitability letters. And the same information, for example, that's used in consumer duty regarding the pricing of the firm is again used in a suitability letter when you're producing this to a client. How about using this data and automating it multiple times? And what we are focused on is using AI in a much more safer manner, in ways that it's more accurate than a human being, but give back the power to a human being to deliver that service.
Okay. Difficult question now. Really difficult question. And this is something we've been asking as NextGen planners, you know, management and leadership quite a bit recently. What will look different if in a financial planning firm within the next 4 to 5 years, in your view?
So the way that it's funny, we have this diagram that we show to potential firms and also to investors, which is the current setup of a financial services firm, a financial advice firm is like a triangle. So at the top, you have your revenue generating advisors. And then as you go down, you've got your administrators, your compliance, your operations directors. We think that's going to invert. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we see an inversion of that triangle to have many more advisors per firm and each advisor serving many more clients. So we just came back from a meeting today where one of the firms that we're speaking to wants to be able to serve between 350 and 500 clients per advisor. Now, the only way to get to that number is to use technology really efficiently. And we think AI is the thing that's going to enable firms to do that. The second thing I would say is maybe your listeners would have almost like a fear of having too many clients. They won't be able to remember their names. They won't be able to remember the details. That's where technology comes in, right? Like you don't need to remember the names if you're not meeting a client for the next 3 months. What you need to do is when you are going to prep for that meeting, you have incredibly detailed, deep information about that client's situation and an up-to-date picture of where that client is, summarized for you in a very, very easy meeting agenda that you then go into the meeting and you look and you seem like you know this client like the back of their hand. You've been thinking about them for the last 6 months. Like that's the level of service that we want firms to provide. And alongside that, we think that firms can solve the advice gap through using technology. So we think that firms' age profile will be very different. Obviously, something that NextGen actually spoke to us about early was 76% of financial planners are going to retire within the next 10 years. And so if you think about the makeup of firms, that's going to be massively younger. The client base is also going to be younger because more people need access to this service, this wonderful human service that financial planners provide, and technology will enable them to get there.
Yeah, I mean, part of the problem and the reason we're putting all this content on for financial planners and our listeners is you're going to stand out if you don't work this way. So it's almost, it's almost like every other firm or every other sector is obviously going to adopt this. And it's going to be a big part of it. And they're going to be personalized. At the moment, I see really bad service everywhere, but I can see that AI is going to improve service across the board. So service is going to become a lot better, I think, very quickly. It's almost going to be like a good financial planning firm without a website, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's what essentially you're going to be if you don't use the right or pick the right technology, right. Which is why we're having conversations with interesting people like you. So what about you, Amal? What do you think the future looks like?
No, I very much align with, I think Rohit covered it well. You could see this example that you just mentioned about a firm not having a website. You're missing out on a lot of opportunities, which is on the digital space. You're mainly depending on referrals and a certain demographic of clients in that manner. So you can see recently when OpenAI came out and the threat against Google's stock went just down when they were not embracing AI. In a similar manner, I think most companies since then have learned to have at least one person or a team or even a larger team dedicate their entire time to just use AI or develop AI or train AI. Just similar to that, I think we're going to see in the next couple of years, many senior directors, advisors, and paraplanning firms seriously embrace AI, not just for client outcomes and operational efficiency, but also to stand, head to head with the other firms who are trying to do this. In the future, if you don't embrace AI and use the data that you have, I think it's going to be very difficult to stay alive. As Ian McKenna just put, the future is when a lot of the assets and also people in the financial planning firms are going to be these quote unquote data engineers who are going to work with this data to kind of automate it. And the financial advisors are continue to deliver an excellent job. And I would love to live in that future.
Okay. Interesting. Big words. I like it and I look forward to it. Okay. As we finish, if you're a financial planner today, what steps are you taking, to stay on top of this? It is quite overwhelming. We're talking about big concepts, we're talking about big dreams. the advice sector probably hasn't moved that much in the last 15, 20 years technologically, and we're saying it's going to move in the next 2 or 3 years. So how do we equip ourselves with the information and the content and, get ready for it?
So, I mean, so we've actually spoken to 2 firms doing this right now. 2 firms who are taking a very strategic look at how they use technology. And the way they're doing that is they're doing a full kind of reconciliation of every single business process that happens across the organization, speaking to the teams internally and figuring out which are the most painful processes, and then looking for technology that solves those painful processes, right? And so the way we think about that is, I think it's a good way to start if you're a firm of a certain size. But I think that the train is moving so quickly that within 3 months of doing this reconciliation, this internal discussions, the bureaucracy that's required, like the technology is going to be massively far ahead, and then you're going to go back to the drawing board again. So we think that using technology, adopt it early, try things out, speak to people who are building the technology, understand what problems they've seen in the industry to be able that they're building technology to solve, and then figure out if that's a problem for your business. So the way we've spoken about consumer duty today, for some firms, like there's one quoted in Professional Advisor recently called Continuum. That firm already uses a lot of consumer duty principles to operate their business, and they're having advisors serve between 150 and 200 clients per advisor already without technology. We think that consumer duty for us could be a real good win for firms in terms of automating processes and automating regulation. Other firms might think of it a different way, and who are we to say that they're wrong and we're right? We're not definitely saying that. What we are saying is firms should try stuff as quickly as possible to see if it can benefit them in ways they have never seen before. And yes, it's overwhelming, but I think that data of just trying stuff will be so informative, and so much more informative than doing kind of internal looking conversations, that you might learn something that you just didn't even think you'd learn. And you're going to learn it much faster. So that's my view. If I was a financial planner, and I'm not, would be to adopt it, try it, speak to people who are building the stuff, understand it to a really deep level, and then go ahead and pick something and just run with it.
Amal, anything to add as we close up?
I think Rohit covered it really well. Currently, all 3 of us are working on this full time, right? Adam, you spoke about you're building something for your daughter, and we are building something in the financial planning space. It's about speaking to more people and then making a sensible approach of how to use it. Obviously, there are risks involved about how you use the data and how deep you integrate AI into your system. But all 3 of us have worked in this industry, and we understand where the problem lies and where the opportunity lies. And obviously speak to more people who are working in the space, and definitely start to use these tools on a personal level. And then you will be able to imagine what's possible on your day-to-day life.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. As I say, you can find out more about Saturn in the show notes, but they're doing some really interesting stuff. And I also know some of their clients as well are doing some interesting stuff. So keep an eye out for these guys. See you soon.